on that note.
Ready, set, podcast.
Yeah. So as you guys know, I don't really know how to start the podcast yet, but it's gonna be something along the lines of "Welcome to Late to the Movies." I'm Ben Holt, and this is a podcast where my friends and I get to fill in our movie blind spots every week. We'll pick a movie that either I or a guest hasn't seen before, but really should have by now. This week, the movie is Die Hard. And the people who haven't seen it before is all three of my guests. That's Pat, Chrissy, and Robbie. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Ben.
So how come you guys haven't seen this movie before?
I don't know, actually.
Because it came out before I was born.
That's fair.
I-
Not by a ton, but
I just never gone out of my way to see
By
it.
a
But
ton, but by the time I was like of R-rated movie watching age, if
Yeah,
you think about
that's-
it that way.
I mean,
Yeah, like 20 years off.
For me, when people were like, "You have to watch Die Hard," that would be like telling me, like, "Oh, you have to watch Transformers." Like, I don't know why you're telling me I have to watch an action movie. They're all just an action movie, but no, it was really good and worth the watch.
Yeah, I think this is, and obviously we'll get into this more, but I think this is one that I always know. I remember that I love this movie. And I mean, we're doing it on the pod for a reason, but not until I'm watching it do I remember just how fucking good this movie is.
It's
This movie
so good.
fucking it slaps so hard. But to get a little bit of context, Robbie's been on the podcast a bunch of times, but you guys are new to it, Pat and Chrissy. So what is your general kind of movie watching, movie going habits? Is it something, a hobby you do a lot, a hobby you do like every now and then if something's on?
I'm not really a big movie person, but Pat.
I grew up in a movie household for sure. I went to the movies all the time with my dad as a kid. And so my dad and I would watch pretty much any big movie that came out. We would go to the theaters and watch it. And as like a young adult, I started getting into like awards across the board, not just movie awards. But then that got me into like the Oscars. So then I would always, and I'm obsessed with like ratings for things, for ratings for everything, for buying things, for movies, for anything. So
You
then
mean like quality ratings? Not
yeah,
like
so like
rated
the
R
IMDb
and
top
shit.
250 for movies.
Okay.
I would go through that, I'd scan it, and I would just try and watch as many of them as I could to pick out really popular movies that I was interested in. So I'd look at things through that. I would look at like best picture winners and watch movies through that. Back in the day where you had to go to like sketchy websites to watch movies because
Yeah.
there weren't as many streaming options
Yeah,
available.
right.
But I grew up with a big movie background. But when I started dating Chrissy, she doesn't really have the attention span for movies.
I'm more of a show person, but I do. I mean, I've definitely watched like a lot of the classic movies, but it was growing up with my parents too. It's pretty rare that I'll go out of my way to watch a movie, but Pat definitely talks me into it a lot. So
yeah,
it's opened my
I've
eyes.
forced you to watch a lot of movies.
Yeah, I'll get some classics that I hadn't seen.
Such
what
as
did you-
Die Hard.
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly. That was one I definitely wouldn't have watched. I've gotten used to watch some classics too that you hadn't seen, but
For me, I always like, I prefer drama movies. I don't really like action movies that much. So I think that's probably why this was a blind spot for
Sure,
me
yeah.
to use the podcast lingo. I find like when I watch like Marvel movies and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, this is kind of boring for me. Boring, predictable. It's just not my speed. And so I guess this movie was a nice surprise because I didn't really expect to enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah, I think it just comes from how smart an action movie is. Not that I dislike Marvel or anything, but I just don't consider it really in the same sort of thing where this is actually trying to be clever and come up with stuff you haven't seen before in a movie and have set pieces that are kind of surprising and twisty type of things and people being steps ahead of each other. I like that. And like you were saying before we started recording, you almost consider it more like almost like a suspense thriller
Right.
on top of the action kind
action
of.
heavy suspense
Yeah.
thriller.
It's
but
definitely baked into the same cake, I think.
for me too. This is what cemented it. Like, I mean, I liked Alan Rickman and I was a fan of him, but I saw a lot of like people were like heartbroken when he died, and I was like, oh, he was a good actor. But for me, this was like, oh, Alan Rickman is a fantastic actor, and losing him was like losing something we won't see again for a very long time. And I get a lot more like why we were so upset about Alan Rickman's passing. So that was very cool
Yeah,
too.
he's so good in
He's
this.
so good.
He's
He was
so good.
amazing.
I feel like every action movie villain should have been based around this character.
Yep.
Ever since this movie came out, he was so good. He was the perfect villain.
Yeah, as a fairly natural, cynical person at times, I appreciate that the villains in this movie are just fucking with everybody and they don't actually believe in anything.
Yeah.
Yes, like especially when
I
they
know.
start, they're like free all of these people. I'm like, that's amazing.
And then they're like, Wait,
read
is it
that
like
in Time
Asian
Magazine.
Dawn? And he goes, I read about him in Time Magazine.
Look, they're going through completely unrelated groups. I'm sure the FBI were like, what the fuck is... Although,
Yeah.
most incompetent FBI I've ever seen, so they probably didn't question it.
Yeah, the feds, the cops, everyone's incompetent. It's great because nothing matters, and it's the 80s. You're at the end of time, and yeah.
I got a note in here that the characters have the opposite of suspension of disbelief. They're like extra, like, no, nothing ever happens ever, and we never report to a single thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is 1988. Reagan's gone full senile. H.W. Bush is about to take over. So, yeah, it's just that a very specific time in American history where you can have a big action movie where nothing matters and everyone sucks, and all the parts of society that are supposed to be the bulwark to protect you from this are actively making John McClane's job harder.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's towards the end, but like when they're like, we can't shut down the electricity, like the mayor will have our ass. It's like, no, they'd be like, terrorists, you need to shut down the entire city. No one can even move an inch. And they'd be like, yes, that's exactly what we're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. Just to touch on it a little bit. So you talked about like getting into the Oscars and stuff. How many times have you won the Oscar party that Greg and we've talked about before on the podcast? Greg and Ray have the.
Well, there was a before Ben era, and then I was probably.
I mean, I think you've won like the last 2 in a row, haven't you?
How many have you been to? I
Or 2 of the last 3. Or it's
I
2
thought
of
we
the
were
last
1
3,
for
at
1.
least.
I thought me and you were 1-1 against each other.
Maybe. I think you've won twice. I've only won once.
Is it 2-1? Okay,
Yeah.
so before you, I'd probably won 4 of 5. Kyle beat me 1 year.
That doesn't sound right.
I promise you, Kyle beat me 1
Yeah,
year.
he was talking about that. He said he didn't watch any of the movies and he just guessed. And he,
Wow.
Kyle beat me 1 year randomly, but
I don't
had
know.
some
Dude,
blow.
we've had Greg on the podcast before, and he said no one besides us has won. So
No,
I
I
guess
promise.
Probably
I
blanked
promise.
it out.
I
Kyle-
The
promise.
first year or something?
I think he mentioned it like last time we were hanging out. I think you were there.
yeah, I'm
I
trying
think I
to
would
trying to
forget
do
a
a
big
bit,
loss.
guys.
I'm sorry.
Kyle got really mad that Greg said he had, that no one else had won.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Kyle got like
Oh.
super mad about it.
Yeah, Kyle never won then.
Yeah, exactly.
Kyle never won.
And
It,
he
it doesn't
called.
count if it was.
I don't know why Kyle makes that story up.
Yeah, it's really weird. Kyle called Greg and told him he was going to like sue him for defamation and stuff. And then Greg's like, "Oh, I'll correct it next time on the podcast." And he did not when we did the recording last
That's
night.
awesome.
And I would just like to double down and say that Kyle has never won. Thanks,
Yeah.
Greg.
That's exactly right. And I just wanted to hit on that real quick. But yeah, let's get into the movie. Who wants to do any of the 3 you can, since it's new to all of you? Who wants to do the brief plot summary of Die Hard from 1988?
I can do it.
Okay.
Because Chrissy and I prepared a little bit before
Cool.
we came. So I'll do brief because I feel like the background is a little bit in depth, but then once the action starts going, it's like a pretty clear cut. But the movie starts out with John McClane, Bruce Willis on a plane. And the thing that happens on the plane that's really weird is he's sitting next to this dude on the plane, and the guy's talking about, "Oh, are you afraid of flying?" And then he starts talking about like this weird grounding technique where he curls his toes into a fist when he gets off the plane, and apparently that feels like really therapeutic. And Bruce Willis is like, "All right, whatever, dude. Like, that's super weird." And then as Bruce Willis is getting off the plane, the passenger notices his gun and points it out. And then it turns out that Bruce Willis is a cop. As soon as Bruce Willis gets off the plane, he is met by a limo driver who is sent by his wife's company to pick him up at the airport. Through exchanges with Bruce Willis and the limo driver, Argyle, who's one of the coolest characters in the movie, obviously.
Argyle's just vibing.
He's the man. He's the man. I would hang out with Argyle. So between exchanges with Bruce Willis and Argyle, as well as his wife and the family's nanny, you learn that they have a pretty strange relationship where Bruce Willis is living in New York currently, separated from the wife. He's coming to visit, so she's asking the housekeeper/nanny to make up a guest room for him. So they're clearly not on good terms. They're not sleeping in the same bed. And through conversations with Argyle, you find out that essentially Bruce Willis's wife took a nice corporate job. He did not have a lot of faith in her as a woman in the workplace. And he was like, you know what? She's not going to have success there. She's going to come crawling back to me in New York eventually. Turns out he was wrong. She had a ton of success in the company. Was like second or third in command in their little office, which is like this really nice like penthouse office building on the 35th floor of a skyscraper in LA. And so Bruce Willis was wrong, and his wife was pissed about it. And so they do not have a good relationship, but he's coming to visit the family for Christmas. It is Christmas Eve at the time during the movie. And he is not sure how his meeting with his wife is going to go when they first meet up. So limo driver drops him off. He goes up to the office. You find out when he's walking into the building that everyone else in the building is gone for the holiday. It's just the wife's company is having their holiday party. And so all of the employees from that company are there. Other than that, the building's vacant. So Bruce Willis goes up. John, I should refer to him as John, not Bruce Willis. John meets up with the boss of the company. He's starting to give her a tour. He goes into the wife's office. He sees like the office douchebag Ellis doing cocaine on her desk.
This is her cop boyfriend.
I know, right?
So he has a kind of awkward interaction with Ellis. It's pretty clear that to Bruce Willis and the viewer that Ellis is interested in his wife sexually. Bruce Willis and his wife are chatting. He wants to go to the bathroom to wash up, so his wife takes him to the bathroom. Then in the bathroom, he's doing that weird thing with his toes. He takes off his shoes, which ends up being like a pretty big plot point that he has no shoes on for the rest of the building because of this decision to try out what the passenger on the airplane was asking him to do. His wife and him get into a fight in the bathroom because his wife has started using her maiden name, and
which he recognizes when he gets to the building and there's a directory he's looking for, and he's looking up his own last name, and she obviously is going by her maiden name.
So he brings that up. There's a big fight. One of the secretaries for the company comes and gets the wife and says she has to give a speech to the rest of the employees. So she leaves, and then all of a sudden, cut to Hans Gruber. You see him and his gang coming in the building. Hans Gruber being the leader of this German. The movie refers to them as terrorists / robber group. So they come into the building. They kill the security guard at the front door immediately. He sets up his own guy as a security guard, and then they're on their way up to the office. Bruce Willis is still in the bathroom being like, man, I can't believe I'm fighting with my wife. I'm already screwing this up. And then all of a sudden he hears gunshots in the foyer of the office building. So as a viewer too, I was like, oh my God, is this just like a mass murder going on in the office building? That's what I thought my immediate thought was. But it turns out that they were just like kind of rounding up the hostages into one little area. So he can kind of see this through people. He makes his escape. Obviously, he's the one to be rounded up as a hostage. And as a cop, he obviously has cop instincts. He wants to get other cops involved. And so he makes it his goal to call the police. So he tries pulling a fire alarm. That doesn't work out. It's just like all the emergency services in LA are pretty incompetent in this movie. He gets to the top of the building. He probably kills a couple of terrorists along the way. One of them happens to be the brother of like the main henchman of Hans Gruber, this big, tall, blonde German guy. And Bruce Willis does this thing where he sends him down an elevator with a costume on. He writes in blood, like, now I have a machine gun. He has, yeah. He has a machine gun. Now he has a radio. He goes to the roof to get a better reception with the radio. He contacts the police. After a back and forth with the police dispatcher, who's also completely incompetent, the police end up sending a single cruiser to the building. And so Bruce Willis is just kind of looking out the window, buying some time. Oh, I missed the part, obviously.
Okay,
so Hans
just a
Gruber.
synopsis. We're gonna go like into things in detail.
Yeah. Well, the part I missed was that they take the boss and they murder the boss in front of Bruce Willis, and that's when he realizes the severity of the situation. So basically, from there on, the goal of Bruce Willis is to ensure the safety of the hostages. Meanwhile, he's like kind of battling wits with the incompetent LA emergency services. And there's a lot of explosions. There's a lot of repelling from objects that are just kind of wedged in between surfaces. There's a lot of killing terrorists, glass breaking, fire. And in the end, the good guys conquer, and Bruce Willis ends up reconnecting with his wife and becomes best friends with this cop he was talking to on the radio throughout the movie. And that's pretty much the key points.
That's pretty much Die Hard.
Yeah.
So this is a star-making turn for Bruce Willis, mostly known for TV going into this.
Oh, what was he on TV? Was
Moonlighting was his big one, Moonlighting.
Oh.
And so he, I think, like comes directly from moonlighting to the set to start filming this one day. And I think the first scene he films, or at least on the first day, is him jumping off the building with the big fire explosion behind him. So they just like started him with that. He insisted on doing most of his own stunts.
Is that where they came up with trial by fire? I mean,
Yeah,
Jesus.
I guess so. And there actually was like a large explosion they set off behind him as he jumped off a 5-story building onto like a big airbag. And I guess
Right.
they're like, all right, welcome to Die Hard. Let's go.
TV prepared you for this.
Pretty much. So it's a star-making turn for him. He gets paid $5 million, which is seen as way too much for someone of his lack of star caliber at the time. But it turns obviously a pretty huge profit. Ends up, I think, number 10 of 1988 in total gross, and obviously still a pretty big deal today. Not critically super well loved at the time, but that's changed over time.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
It's interesting.
Yeah, it changed, I guess, actually pretty quickly. So when it comes out, it's thought of as like, yeah, it's just stupid. And then
Really?
I think it actually like is Academy Award nominated that year. So I guess the tide changed pretty quickly. But yeah, so I love at the beginning for the first, until all the fighting breaks out, that everything, like literally any normal interaction that happens to John McClane, he kind of goes like, California.
Yes.
Just like treating it like a foreign country where he just doesn't understand normal human interactions, and everyone's just such a weirdo. He's
Yeah, the scene in
California.
the airport where these two people are like kissing when they greet each other in the airport.
He's like, I don't know about that.
this
Weird.
free loving city.
Well, it was funny too, because in the beginning he's like, I can't leave New York. I got 9 months of backlog criminals to put away. My note is like, oh yeah, no crime in LA apparently. Like there was no work for you to pick up in LA. Like I'm sure they could have used your help in the late 80s, buddy.
Well, I think that's the sequel, right? He just becomes an LA cop so he can be closer to his
I
family.
just watched this one.
Yeah. We'll yeah, that'll be the next episode.
He decides to be a cop in the 80s after that, though. I think that would send me right back home and be like, all right, honey, come be an
fucking done with
executive
this.
in New York. We don't have this fucking Hans asshole blowing up
You
buildings.
could probably get like a pretty good private security job, I assume, after this.
Bad timing. Stay in LA, actually. That was 88. Oof.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So he Bruce Willis is so good in this movie. It's just they offered it to a ton of people before they eventually, I guess, settled for Willis, even though they did pay him really well.
Nobody wanted $5 million.
Nobody wanted it. They had to originally contractually offer it to Frank Sinatra, who was 70 at the
Oh
time.
my
because
God.
It's based on a book that's a sequel to a book that was adapted into a Frank Sinatra movie. So legally they had to offer it to Sinatra first, and all it says is like, yeah, he declined. He was 70.
Tell you what, I'll pay $10 million for that movie.
I know, right? But yeah, and
You're gonna die hard.
so this movie ends up, and I guess we'll get big picture first and then go more granular into the cool set pieces and stuff. But this sort of is a huge swerve for what action movies look and feel like. And for an action star at the time, you're thinking of Stallone and Schwarzenegger. And the director, which I'll cut out this part where I'm looking for his first name. His last name is McTiernan, but that just sounds weird if I just call him that, like it's McLovin or something.
McTiernan.
Director John McTiernan, the previous year, 1987, did Predator, which is like
No way.
maybe the archetypal 80s action movie.
Yes.
Who's starring in it. Even the supporting characters are huge muscle-bound dudes.
So he had one success. He was like, got to milk these things for all they're worth, both
Yeah.
Die Hard and Predator. He was like, time
Yeah.
to make 10 of these.
I know, right?
Let's make the 2 most iconic action movies ever.
Yeah. So this is his follow-up to Predator, and he puts, with Bruce Willis in it, it's such a subversion of the kind of, not necessarily dumb, but super not like defined by their smart thinking and intelligence, or at least the street smart kind of MacGyver ability that Willis has. And he's not a huge muscle bound dude, and he's kind of balding, and it's Bruce Willis. He's more approachable, even though he is still like Bruce Willis ripped in this movie.
It's interesting because you're right, but he does still have a little bit of that, like, I don't want to say muscle head, but like that cop attitude of like, I don't need anyone else's opinion about anything. I already know everything. But like at the same time, he does a good job using his head. So he does use his head. I don't know.
Well, he's a cowboy, right? He's like the archetype of like what a modern cowboy, I guess, would be, where
Do it myself.
He does like every boss and anyone's boss in this movie. If you're a boss, you're an asshole. Besides Takagi, and he gets his head blown off in like his second scene. So
Yeah.
And I guess Holly technically is a boss at the end. So
Yeah, I was
she's
thinking that.
a nice enough lady.
She was like, "Oh, I'm Mrs. McClane now," and I'm like, "I don't know if that was the moral here. Like, you can get back together, but I guess you're in charge of this company, so maybe you should stay in charge of the company." I don't know.
Or at least she's the acting manager in this particular site of the Nakatomi Corporation. So yeah, let's get a big picture before we get miniature here. What do you guys think of the movie? I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to stop for a while.
I thought it was a good movie. Like I said, I don't usually watch action movies, so I didn't really know what I was going to think, but I was watching it with Pat, and it was definitely entertaining. It kept my attention for the whole movie. Some things were a little predictable, but some of it wasn't, so I thought it was I can see why people like it.
Yeah. I really liked it. I thought it was fantastic. I liked that there was a decent amount of twists. I liked that it wasn't super predictable. I don't know. It was an interesting premise of like stealing from a group of business people that have a vault, not like a bank in general. I don't know. It's just cool.
Yeah, well, you have that many. I forgot the specific term he used, but they're bearer bonds.
They're bearer bonds. And I have a note about that too, because this comes up in movies a lot. And it's like, if you as a business weren't doing shady shit that you needed untraceable forms of large amounts of money, you wouldn't always end up in these situations where a criminal can come in and fucking try to rob your vault, because that's the only reason to have bearer bonds. So he does have a point where he's like, you're not a great company. They're clearly doing some things that are not great that we don't see, but whatever.
What did you think, Pat?
I thought it was good. I mean, as far as action, it was very entertaining. You cannot take away from the entertainment factor from this movie. Entertainment, 10 out of 10. I thought that it fell into like some of the movie tropes where like all the bosses were dumb. All the bosses made bad calls throughout. Pretty much every single good guy had nothing bad happen to them, with one exception, with the Takagi exception. And then all the bad guys ended up like failing in the end. The guy got back together with his wife. The one movie trope it didn't fall for, I'll say, when the original cop who comes to the scene, Roy? No, what's his name?
Al.
Alan?
Al.
When Al comes to the scene, when Al's first introduced, and you find out he has a pregnant wife at home, he's a black cop. I'm like, this dude's dead.
He was gonna die.
He didn't die though, thank God. That was so I failed to see that coming, and I like that they didn't just be like black guy with a pregnant wife dies. Like I like that they didn't fall into that trap. But those are my complaints. But it was so incredibly entertaining. So it's not a movie where you're like watching the clock and being like, how much time is left. It's a quick 2 hours.
For sure, yeah.
Did anybody else pick up? They made his nickname, like the police made his nickname Abe Lincoln. It's like, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
I figured
No.
I figured his name's Al.
Oh, yeah, like when they
him.
give like an officer, like his officer nickname is Abe Lincoln. Like, I don't know if there's a point trying to be made there, but
Yeah,
it's
I don't
kind
even
of
remember
No,
that.
I don't either.
yeah. It's,
On the dispatch a couple times say like Abe Lincoln and whatever number it is, like can you respond to a code whatever at Nakatomi Plaza?
and I don't think I heard anyone else's nickname there. And I'm like, I wonder if they're trying to make like a subtle, like they're giving this guy shit for being like one of the only black cops on the force in the 80s.
Maybe I just figured because his name is Al Abe Lincoln.
Okay. It was just,
But it could be. I mean, it could be that too. It's some,
I don't know.
you
It
know.
was just, I was like, this is a weird thing.
They chose the people who wrote the movie chose Abe Lincoln, or I mean, maybe that's part of the book. The book is not super relate. I mean, I haven't read it, so grain of salt, but it's apparently pretty different. But it is technically based on a book.
I guess that makes sense though. Why the plot's so much better than your average action movie?
Mhm.
It was an
So
actual
based
like
off something.
written out plot.
Was the book called Die Hard or?
The book was called "Nothing Lasts Forever" by Roderick Thorpe from 1979.
Which I guess technically means Die Hard.
Yeah, I think it's technically not technically. I think it's pretty much considered to be sort of just like a pulpy, not that smart kind of book, and it's pretty different, the movie. So a lot of what happens in the movie is not necessarily improvised, but just shit they came up on the day with, where they were like, this is the vibe we want to do, so what should happen in this scene? And then they didn't like storyboard it basically at all. Literally, like the director and the cinematographer would meet up that morning and say, here's what we want to accomplish in this scene. Here's the vibe we're going for. What can we do?
Well, and I mean, if you think about a lot of the scenes based on like what the order and like which characters know what things, you could almost reshuffle most of the middle of the movie and not really change it whatsoever, you know? So that
Yeah.
kind of, you could see that where that would be how they did things. But it turned out to be great. All the scenes were fucking entertaining as hell. So
Yeah, so we can get into why I think this is a. Usually, when I am thinking about like, okay, what is the best action movie? What's like the perfect structure for an action movie? I think of Die Hard because it's just so defined. I feel like the best action movies are when there is sort of defined, almost like a game or a sport. You know, in this movie, what the playing field is, what the teams are, what his objective is. You can see him like tallying up and keeping names on his arm of who he's killed, who's still there. He gathers information. He scavenges supplies after he takes people out.
yes.
You always know what he has at his disposal, what he's lost, what condition he's in. And yeah, it's like a video game. He's like fighting mini bosses and rolling them up into fighting eventually the big boss and conserving ammo when he needs to. And
Right, you could
So
almost you could probably take chunks and treat each one as like a 20-minute episode if it was going to be a TV show
Yeah.
where like each scene had a specific purpose and like objective getting to the final one.
for sure. So I think the kind of limited scope of what's happening in the movie allows them to just play in that space with everything that's happening. And Nakatomi starts as this sort of maze-like thing where all the rich finance people who are just like high on cocaine are in like the really nice
So much
areas.
cocaine.
And John McClane, who's the blue collar cop, is just like crawling through air ducts and he's in like the service corridors exclusively and like only in the industrial parts of the building.
Yeah, and like when you were mentioning the no
Jumping
shoot
through elevator shafts and shit.
I was wondering like what the director's intention there was because that's a clear like decision. And I mean, I think it ties into like that blue collar piece of things, but it's an interesting
I was wondering where it was going to get looped back into with the no shoes.
Yeah,
He's just so vulnerable. He's like so human, and action stars at this time really aren't.
well, and that's I got that second. Like, I really loved when Alan Rickman was like, "Shoot the glass," and you do exactly like he's like, "Oh, he knew."
Yeah,
the
so
guy was
everyone's making
barefoot. Like,
interesting, smart decisions.
yeah, like what villain ever makes a decision like that in a movie?
shoot the
You
glass.
don't see those like really good like, and he wasn't overly violent. He was very calculated and very like, what's the best decision to make right now at this second, and then we'll go from there. I don't know. I fucking loved it.
That was the most brutal scene when he had to pull that giant chunk of glass out of his foot.
Yep.
That was brutal.
I just didn't watch. That was fine.
Yeah, as he's like pulling the glass out of his feet, that's when Al's telling him that he shot a kid.
I know.
Yep. I loved that too. I love that Al had his own like little small B plot
Redemption.
that they
know.
resolved in the movie. I was like,
Yeah.
that's you put that into like a 5-minute span of seeing this character, and he had his own fucking arc. Like,
Yeah.
that was fantastic.
And I guess we should mention it's like, yeah, it's probably different that his arc is that he shot a kid and now he's afraid to shoot people, and no, he learns how to shoot people again at the end.
It's beautiful.
So interesting. And like even when Pat was talking about like when they were walking in and they were shooting and it was like you were thinking they were shooting a bunch of people, like that's how we saw it. But I think even for a movie in the 80s, the idea of having a terrorist go into a building and start shooting like that was just unthinkable. I don't think anybody in the audience
Yeah, you're right. That's probably 21st century eyes where I was like,
Right.
this is a mass shooting.
Yeah, no, and like I think it's just interesting. Like
It was more like they wanted to negotiate or get something out of it. Your mind didn't go to just mass murder.
I don't even think they could have thought of something that like bad. Yeah, no, it's that there's that line.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's great. And I just thought of, thinking about, so a little over 10 years before is Halloween, and Michael Myers is so scary because he doesn't have any motive.
Right.
He's just moving and killing. And these guys, everyone keeps thinking, oh, I'm gonna negotiate with them. Even the Al's boss comes, the deputy police chief of Los Angeles, and he's like, well, there can't be hostages. If there were hostages, we would have
a reason.
Yeah,
And
they
it's
would
like,
have given
no.
us demands by now. There would have been a ransom request. And
And
it's
you
just
do
like, no,
kinda-
there's no ransom request.
You got to put yourself back into that
Yep.
time frame where the world itself hadn't really seen events
Yeah.
like this. It might not even be that unrealistic the way that the services were responding. That might have just been.
Yeah. Well, as Al says, they're running the universal terrorist playbook. But
Yeah.
these guys aren't
Yep.
even terrorists.
Nope.
So they're running a playbook that it does not fit the situation. And so that's why the cops and the feds are always one step behind, because they continually underestimate it. And Hans Gruber just stays a step ahead of them the whole time. great stuff.
It's kind of like what we were talking about with Lecter too, where he's a great villain because you don't know his backstory. Like you don't know where he learned the FBI playbook. You don't know why he has this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just cool when he does.
There was that one news clip where they said he was part of an organization.
Yeah.
And they disowned him.
Yeah, he was part of an organization. Even the organization was like, we didn't have anything to do with this guy.
We got nothing.
Yeah, we called up the terrorists, press reps on the phone, and they said, yeah, we don't like this guy anymore. He's out.
Terrorist said, no new phone. Who dis?
It's funny. I think all the media stuff that gets threaded through pretty subtly, I feel like as I'm getting older, that hits, that stuff really pops, where it's just all the media people are either like vapid idiots, like the guy who's like, Helsinki, that's in Finland, or the remote reporter who is like really just the shittiest dude.
That was a great side plot.
Maybe besides Ellis in the movie, he's like the shittiest dude who like threatens to call, I guess, INS on the housekeeper, who is clearly Latina, if she doesn't let him in the house to interview children on live TV.
Ethical.
Yeah, I was like, is this illegal?
Yeah,
To interview a 5-year-old without their parents' consent on the news?
At the time, probably.
yeah. Well, they let the housekeeper let him in, so yeah, he didn't care about that. He just wanted to be first and have the most ratings for it, So that's another thing. This movie just thinks everything sucks, and everyone besides cowboy types, besides John McClane types, not even cops in general, because the cops suck in the movie.
It wasn't even a pro cop movie. Even the one good cop was, he was this like out of shape, not actual cop. The only good cop was the one not performing as a cop,
Mm-hmm. I love that the FBI comes on the scene, and you've been dealing with this terrible deputy chief guy who does. He's the principal from Breakfast Club, and he's essentially playing the same character. It's just like an unrepentant asshole.
Okay.
He looks so familiar.
Yeah, that's what it is. I looked it up too. It's like, where's this guy from?
I'm gonna knock your dick right in the dirt.
Yeah, and then the feds get there, and they're kind of like way more nonchalant. You're like, okay, well, at least the deputy guy's not like in charge anymore.
Yeah, you do get a sense of relief.
And then it turns out the feds are worse.
Also incompetent. Yeah.
So bad.
They're worse when they're like riding in on the helicopter, and he's like, aha, just like Saigon. Wow, these guys fucking suck.
Just like Saigon, fuck you is what I wrote.
Yeah. Fuck these guys.
You could. That's exactly their mindset. They're like, I'm so badass. I'm just like a GI. Like, oh my god, I hate them all.
Yeah, even the deputy guy's like, fuck those guys.
The guy in the helicopter was like, I'm too young for that. Like, the other guy's too young for that. He wasn't in Saigon.
Well, they all get blown up anyway, so.
That's true. Oh, that's to make them unredeemable, so you don't feel bad.
Right, yeah. And you're like, yeah, you know what? Screw those guys, too.
There you go. There's some Saigon for you, pal.
Guess we're going to need some more FBI guys, which is like...
There was some unintentional comedic gold when the deputy chief goes, I hope that's not a hostage. I don't know why, but I found that fucking hilarious.
I don't think it's unintentional. I think it's supposed to be funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, which part?
Oh, when he threw him.
After Hans Gruber falls, and he goes, I hope that's not a
I
hostage.
hope that's not a hostage. Just like, wow. Yeah, obviously, but this is not something you say, deputy commissioner. What's wrong with you?
Well, everything's a little heightened, so it's fine.
It was good. It was great. I loved it.
This movie really lends itself well to just like throw out some favorite parts. What do you guys think?
My favorite scene was the Bruce Willis, the John McClane and Hans Gruber meeting up in real life scene, because it's just that when you give a guy a gun to like gauge how much you can trust them, it was just fantastic. I couldn't tell if he knew from literally the second that he introduced himself, if he knew it was Hans Gruber. But obviously,
he starts doing that like crazy American accent.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
With Alan Rickman playing like a German guy, and Alan Rickman obviously British playing a German guy doing a fake American accent.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was awesome. The scene where the security guard is pretending to watch college football and be like gambling on college football.
50 books on
I'm
this.
so American. I watch college football.
So good.
Both of those scenes cracked me up, but yeah, the one where they meet up and
that scene's awesome, and they're just like kind of, you can tell they're sizing each other up, and he says his name's Bill Clay, and McClane clocks that there's a William Clay on the directory board behind him, and you don't know if that means he trusts him more or less. Then he gives him the gun, and he starts walking away, And I just love Willis's face as he's got the cigarette sort of hanging out of his mouth, even though, smoking's not cool, but he makes it look super cool in this movie. And you hear Gruber speaking German into his walkie-talkie and bring the gun up behind him, and then he tries to shoot him. It doesn't work because he took the bullets out.
For that scene, I had been waiting because, obviously his wife is in the building. So you're waiting for, when that shoe drops, when Hans finds out his wife is there. And I was wondering if that was going to be the scene. So that's, up until the point where he got the gun, I was, waiting. And I was like, oh, he still hasn't said that his wife is here. I don't think he still trusts him. And then it was click. Okay, yep. But it was good. You really weren't sure, if he was just not mentioning, maybe he wouldn't have mentioned that with anyone. He didn't with the police, but I don't know. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. The whole thing that's great is you're in this building and it's such a cat and mouse game, but McClane isn't only in survival and hide mode. He also sometimes has the upper hand, and then sometimes it comes right back the other way because then, Gruber is basically just fine, I already had a plan B in motion. There's backup coming just in case this didn't work out.
Yep.
And that's right when the elevator opens. But yeah, so anything else?
I was just thinking, I really like the scene when Ellis thought he had this great plan to go negotiate, and he's sitting there, he's feeling all cool, and they're they just obviously end up killing
him. And he keeps being oh, my life's at stake here, and then he gives a thumbs up and a wink to Hans.
But there's suspense there because you can see John McClane realizing, obviously what he's doing and trying to kind of help him, even though he hates him. So yeah,
but that's when I thought the wife shoe was gonna fall.
Yeah.
I still am stunned. Why didn't this dude just throw he's clearly a guy who cares about himself. Why didn't he just throw John's wife under the bus?
I think he thought he could work it out that he would be the one to give them McClane, and then he would get in on whatever they're doing, kind of, and he'd enrich himself in some way. I don't know. He's just an asshole. But he's kind of stupid.
What I got from it is I don't think he's stupid because he's a higher up in this company. He's clearly a somewhat intelligent person. What he is he's someone who thinks he's smarter than he is.
Yeah, that's very fair.
So he went into that situation and he didn't give John up because even at a certain point in that interaction, I thought he knew what he was doing, and he did kind of know what he was doing. What he did wrong was he misunderstood the stakes and he treated it like business stakes and not this is a man that will just fucking kill me. Yeah. So I think he was trying to be smart and he was trying to make good decisions. And I think John saw that too and realized you're so fucked, man. You don't even know the game you're playing right now.
Right.
You don't know what kind of dude you're messing with right now.
That whole sequence is so good. You're totally right. Yeah, McClane, even though he hates this dude, is immediately you don't know who you're fucking with here. You're really in over your head.
I see the tactic you're doing because he asked him. He's what did you tell him? Because he was about to go murder him. I think you know what I mean. He's if you told him about Holly, but he knew no, I'm not. That's not the play here. I don't think he was trying to save himself necessarily. I think he was trying to be the hero.
And he felt indestructible. And we saw him doing cocaine multiple times too. So he probably had overconfidence.
This is
right before he decides to go in to talk to Hans, you can see he's tweaking out, and he has everything he says is just so he is it's almost over the top, but he's the guy that is standing in for kind of 80s businessman douchebag excess.
Yes.
When Holly, he's kind of tweaking out on cocaine and he's I'm going to go in there. This has gone on long enough. And Holly's what are you going to do? He says, I close $1 million deals for breakfast, babe, or something like that.
Yeah, perfect.
You don't know his background too much, but he definitely comes off as the guy who was he was born on third base, thought he hit a triple. Yeah. One of those types of dudes. So he thought he could do nothing wrong. He probably thought he was invincible in the moment. Yeah, you're probably right. He was I'm going to save the day. This is easy. No one's just trying it.
They're not going to kill me. I'll give them money.
Exactly. The best fucking part when he comes in and he says oh, what can you do for me? He goes, Hans, booby, I'm your white knight.
That was amazing. And I just love what he's and this. And Hans is you're exactly right. I'm my God, you fucking moron. You
Hans
fucking
immediately
moron.
is oh, this will be fun. I'll fuck with this guy and then shoot him in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as he walked in, I'm going to murder this guy.
Was anyone sad by that, though?
No.
I was
kind of. And it sets up the amazing gag where, once again, just making fun of TV news, the TV, you cut back to the news station and they have on a quote unquote expert, and he's describing, well, at this point there's something called the Helsinki syndrome. When the anchors goes, that's in Finland. And you're starting to get some sympathy and they're kind of mentally switching roles. And And as he's still going on, then you just hear the audio as the robbers, quote unquote terrorists, are dragging Alice's body through the room, and everyone's like kind of like shocked and like really freaking out. And the quote unquote expert is still saying like, yeah, we know a lot of people still correspond with their captors when they're in prison, and like they actually become like pretty like close and intimate.
That was hilarious.
You're like, oh, okay, so everyone's bullshit, nothing matters.
I
Like,
lost it when he gave the book name. It was hostage terrorist hostage. I was, oh my god, this is so out of touch. It's hilarious.
love Ellis. Yeah, that whole sequence is great. The way he's playing it, just like not understanding. The way Hans is kind of egging him on, and the way McClane. And there's a great moment where Hans says, "There's someone like important to you that I have here," and you can see on McClane's face he thinks it's his wife.
That's the suspense, though. That's where you're.
Yeah, and then it's Ellis that comes on, and then he immediately goes, "Oh no, Ellis has fucked everything up."
Exactly. That realization.
Yeah, his heart sinks when he thinks it's his wife, but then he's probably like, "This is an even worse situation because at least she's smart."
My wife would know what to do.
Right? Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. Anything else? Like I said, I feel like this is a good one to just jump around. I love when so Reginald Vell Johnson from Family Matters, he plays Al, the cop, the good cop. Well, first off, I love the relationship that him and Bruce Willis established.
I know.
It's just like they're just such good bros, and it's definitely like a more emotional meeting of them at the end than Holly and John reuniting.
Right. We kind of saw their chemistry.
Yeah.
They're building
They
a
go back
relationship.
together first,
Right.
but it's Al that John McClane sees through the crowd and like walks to in slow motion, and then they have like a really tight hug.
Well, they didn't have any relationship building. Al and John had
Yeah.
relationship building.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were rooting, obviously, for Al because he was the one that could see, he was the one that figured out that he seemed like a cop and,
Yep.
things like that when everybody else just was incompetent and wasn't picking up on, him trying to help everyone. So
For sure.
I love that part. Like, I think he's a cop. Oh, on a gut feeling? Well, he used like all of our lingo, so I don't know.
Literally
Fuck me,
is.
I guess.
He
but-
told me the exact right information that I needed to know. He told me he used the code like, oh, it's a party line to tell me that like the terrorists are
People
listening.
are on
he
there.
also radioed into the police line.
Yeah, he knew
obviously
like the
what he was
channel
doing.
and all that.
He's probably just a bartender.
Yeah.
I was like, are you fucking
Guy's the
kidding
worst.
me?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, probably the same guy that pulled that fire alarm. I don't know.
I know.
Like,
Yeah, probably. Like
And I loved that with the dispatcher when he's on the phone with him,
this
and
is
then
for
like
emergencies only.
she takes off the headset because the gunshots are too loud, and
Oh,
I'm like,
she was the worst.
That was like the
All
most
right,
frustrating
go-
part of the movie. Like,
go see, I guess.
Of all the dumb characters, she
Yeah.
was the worst.
I know,
It
like
was so
there had been
bad.
a fire alarm pulled. This guy's radioing in, talking about emergency. She's like,
You're
"Sir,
getting an emergency
call
call from a place that
911.
just had a fire alarm pole, and you're like, it's probably just a coincidence. They're both
Yeah.
mistakes.
I mean, granted, it's LA. I guess they have like, automatic weapon fire all the time. Is that just par for
Yeah.
the course?
And it's not like Bruce Willis has like a child's voice. Like it's an
No,
actual
they're actually-
adult
Right.
who is telling you like very specific information.
They're just dismissing it.
Yeah.
And they're not like, oh, there's a monster here. And you're like, you're a child. No, get out of here. I love when Al gets the call. And one thing I hadn't noticed before is he gets the call to go to Nakatomi Plaza, and he like throws his chips or whatever in his backseat of his cruiser. Twinkie, sorry.
Remember, he rehearses
The
Yeah.
ingredients.
recites the ingredients. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
That was a weird.
That was weird.
He's like, why do you know the ingredients of fucking Twinkies?
Well, yeah,
His
he
wife,
must
I
eat
think,
a lot
wanted
of
him a lot. Her
Twinkies.
cravings of her
Mhm.
pregnancy is what I don't know.
Yeah, and the guy at the cash register does not believe that they're not for him, which is fun. But so he's like, well, I'll just take a look. So he looks, he can see Nakatomi Plaza from where he is, and you see like lights going off on the roof, and he just thinks it's like emergency, or, warning lights or whatever. And then you cut to the roof, and there's muzzle flashes going off because there's a firefight happening.
Yes.
I hadn't noticed that before, and that's cool. But
But
yeah.
you worry that Al's incompetent at first too.
Right.
Mhm.
Like,
Well,
Well, he's
he
exploring the
kind of has
building.
to be pulled kicking and screaming into the plot of the movie.
I loved that.
That
Like
scene's
as soon
great.
as you saw him connect the pieces, I'm like, I can't wait for this fucking body to hit the car. You you knew it was gonna. He's like body hole. Yep.
Oh man, yeah, it's so good. The whole sequence where Al goes inside and the guy's pretending to be into college football, and you see Al walking down the hallway. There's a guy with a gun around the corner, and Al like right before he gets to that guy's just like, oh screw this, I'm going home. And he starts pulling away, and McClane's just like, oh you stupid son of a bitch. And yeah,
Like, you want me to hit you over the head with it? Fine.
he throws
The body's at the
he
floor.
throws the body on the car. Oh, the gunshots start going off. I feel like Val Johnson plays that scene really great. He's just going like, "Ah, Jesus Christ!" And
That was awesome.
he's just panic reversing all the way off of like a large ledge
Yes.
through trees and like planters and stuff. And
I do love the plan because, like, part of me wanted to be like, well, what? They're going to kill him now? They'll obviously send backup. But then I'm like, wait, everything else in this movie had told me, like, nope, they won't. Maybe a week later, they'll be like, hey, what's with that cop car full of holes over there? And anyone hear from Al? Like,
yeah, eventually they get it, and the cops go, yeah, and everything's just awesome in this movie. I love. There's not a single second that's not I feel like there's almost nothing wasted. Everything is interesting or like a smart choice or kind of fresh, something you necessarily haven't seen before. Even when it's like, oh, I can tell what's about to happen. When there's the guy on the zigzag conference table, and he's on top while McClane's climbing underneath, and he says like, next time you get a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate or something like that. And then McClane just shoots him through the table.
and like
He's like, good advice, thanks.
just even the way he died too, like after saying that, like, I don't know, the way they chose to have the shots hit was just like very satisfying. I don't know. It was
it's
like-
definitely interesting stuff.
Yeah.
There's the guy who gets it real bad after the scene where McClane and Gruber meet up, and then the backup comes, and the first guy to run into the room, McClane shoots his knees out, and then he falls forward and goes like face first through a pane of glass.
Oh yeah.
You're like, damn, that guy.
I'll
Real
say
brutal.
the special effects on the bullet impact were pretty good in this movie for an
the
80s
squibs
movie.
and stuff are
Yeah.
really powerful. Like, yeah, for sure. The scene where there's the SWAT vehicle that goes up the steps and like knocks down a railing, and then they shoot rocket launchers at it. It's crazy. If you look into the filming of this movie, I thought like, oh, maybe that's miniatures or something, or like they just did that.
Really?
Yeah, they just did that. The railing that it knocks over, they didn't replace. So, like,
Oh, that's so funny.
I guess it maybe, yeah. And they had explosives like on a wire to simulate the rockets going into it. So they actually were like firing explosives at a SWAT vehicle.
Damn.
It was just
awesome.
like fucking cool. Yeah.
That must have been so cool.
Fantastic.
It must have been super cool. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. That's a lot of it is just like, oh, how'd they do that? Oh, I don't know. They just did
They
it.
just
Like,
did it.
That's what he blew up the whole like fourth floor or whatever floor it was. That was a real explosion too, right?
yeah, it was a real explosion. They said they accidentally, after McClane throws the C4 on the chair and the computer monitor down the elevator shaft, they accidentally did blow out all the windows on a floor of a building. Because they're like, oh, they actually fired off an explosion.
Wow.
Accidentally.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, they say we can't actually do that, but I know we need it for the shot, so we're just going to pretend we didn't mean to. It's
That was
probably one of those
so
things.
great and so satisfying. Where he's like, "You got the first shot. You don't have to do the second. He's like, I'll tell you what you need to do, what I need to do." He's just mumbling to himself. I'm sitting there as the viewer, also mumbling to myself. I'll
Yeah.
show you what I need. Fantastic,
It's
fantastic.
great. And I guess he'd made like a quick mental calculation of like, all right, this will kill those two terrorists. Won't bring the building down. Won't kill people I don't mean to kill.
Yeah, I was worried about the foundation of the building
Yeah.
as well.
And that's the one time where the deputy's like, dude, you just blew up a building. What the fuck?
All right, fine. I'll give it to him.
He's like, you think I care about a building right now? It's like, I don't know, man.
Well,
You son
maybe
of
you
a-
should probably care about the building a little bit.
Yeah, but that's when he says, why would you think he cares about what you do to him when he gets out of here? He doesn't think he's going to survive. Like,
No, that's true.
That
was pretty great.
Oh man, so good. We didn't talk about it yet. So he goes into. There's a few different shafts. I'm not sure they're all elevator shafts, but at least a lot of them are. The scene where he kind of jumps and then misses the first duct entrance, and falls down to the next one. He wasn't supposed to. It's not Bruce Willis doing that stunt, but the stunt man actually fell that amount of distance and then like caught himself on the next one. And they're like, that looks way cooler. We'll stick with that.
That's crazy.
Terrifying.
By fell, do you mean like if he actually didn't catch that, he could have like fallen to his death, or like they messed up?
I assume like right under that is probably a mat or something.
Okay.
And he just
Okay.
caught himself at the last second, but it probably
Would have
It
broken
still
bones
would've
and
been-
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
probably pretty uncomfortable, because if he fell that much further and then caught himself just with his hands on a really thin ledge, like he
Right.
probably fucked up his shoulders or something.
It's true.
But hey, stuntmen, that's what they do. So cool. All that to say, the scene in the duct where he's crawling forward. It's in darkness, and then he turns the lighter on, and it's just.
It's iconic. That's one of the scenes I've seen. Like
that was
not
peak
seen the
suspense
movie.
of the movie. Peak suspense.
But that line, come out to the coast, get together, we'll have a few laughs. It's like, man, Willis, I don't see anyone else doing this role as good as Willis. Holy shit, it's so good.
Yeah, he sold it really well.
Yeah.
Especially for his first big role. Good for him. Like that was
Yeah. I love how much he sort of like, you can track just how like more and more fucked up he's getting over the course of the movie, whether it's his feet or he starts with a white like A-frame shirt, and by the end it's completely black.
I love
just
that.
from like probably grease from going around the
at
ducks
the end, right?
and
Isn't he
stuff.
shirtless at the end?
Well, yeah. Before he takes it off.
Yeah.
Well, then the first time Holly sees him, like she's been dealing with like the terrorists directly the entire time, and she's like, "What the fuck?" Like, and it's just fun because like she's been through an ordeal, and then she looks at him and can just immediately be like, "Oh man, I've had it great." Like,
yeah. Just there's so many great, just like little lines, not a ton of, standout stuff like the come out to the coastline, but there's a lot of stuff like he yells, "No, you macho assholes," when the SWAT team's like coming into the building and stuff.
I got a Rickman one, another orphan of a bankrupt culture. I thought was like cutting
Well,
in perfect.
That leads into the other most iconic line from the movie. Yeah, he says, are you just like another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks you're,
Another
John Wayne, Rambo, Marshall Dillon, and he says he's always partial to Roy Rogers because of the sequin shirts.
Who is Roy Rogers? I wrote that down.
A cowboy guy.
Just like a John Wayne actor?
Specifically like a cowboy and like a cowboy show
really?
kind of guy.
So he's saying like, "What do you think? You're John Wayne, a badass?" And he's like, "No, I'm just a good showman." Right? Is that the?
I guess he's just more of a specific cowboy type guy because John Wayne is often like a sheriff type guy, and John Wayne's a cop.
Okay.
Where-
Yeah, I don't know these two people well enough to
or like a soldier and shit, and Roy Rogers is more just like the cowboy kind of on his own type of guy.
Okay. Lone Ranger.
Sure, yeah, that's a good one. And that's when Hans sets him up for the line by saying, "Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?" He says, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker."
Yep.
I love how he delivers it and then just like slowly he just like turns, goes through the door. Yeah.
I was waiting for that line too because I knew that was going to come up at some point.
Yeah.
Like, where's
Perfect
it
delivery, no notes. I wrote here no notes on page 5 of 11. I wrote no notes.
going? You wrote that though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering where that line came from. It's such a random cluster of sounds that he just kind of threw together. and
It's a Roy Rogers thing.
Oh, it is?
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's cowboys
Ah.
saying like yippee-ki-yay and then, riding their horse into battle or some
Gotcha.
shit. Yeah.
I didn't know
Okay.
that it was like an old Western term.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you want it. You got it. I love when after all the shit goes down with the C4 in the office chair, he yells Geronimo motherfucker when he keeps calling people motherfucker and throwing shit or just shade. And then he's talking on the walkie-talkie to Al, but Dwayne the deputy takes over and he's like trying to give him orders and stuff, and he says, "I'm not the one who just got butt fucked on national TV, Dwayne."
This is amazing.
You're like, "Yeah, Dwayne."
I love that too. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have your ass." Like, you are a cop in LA. I don't know what the fuck you think you're gonna do to Bruce Willis, who's a cop in New York. But like, if I know one thing about police, it's that they never get in trouble. So
Oh, so good. Should probably mention that the actual heist that's happening and all the stuff going on with Theo is they're not actually terrorists. They're just trying to steal the bearer bonds, like we mentioned. And Theo's the only non like 6'5" super tall white blonde guy in the crew.
The computer guy.
Besides the other guy with the big goatee, the Asian guy that's in there too. Theo's the computer guy. He's working on getting the vault open. He keeps talking about needing a miracle. And then later on, you realize that the whole plan was to have the FBI order the city to cut the power, because after getting enough magnetic locks done, cutting the power will open the vault that has all the bearer bonds in it. And this scene in this sequence is just so awesome because you're cutting between Gruber and Theo and whoever else is left. I guess it's just Carl maybe at this point of the terrorist group. The big, the tall, the final,
long-haired guy.
yeah, the final long-haired blonde guy that's there. And like a
The
slow
Asian
version
guy,
of
maybe? I don't know.
Ode to Joy's playing
Mhm.
while it opens, and Theo says "Merry Christmas" at the same time the FBI's outside saying like, oh, "I bet that's got them pissing their pants."
Yes, yeah,
Like,
and then
they're
they
just
do
so
like a
dumb.
Yeah.
kid in a candy shop montage, and they're like, "We
Yeah.
really got them."
Right, yeah, and yeah, they don't know that they are just helping them so much.
Yes,
It's just there's just so many fun things happening.
So is Theo a loose end? Because we don't see exactly. He gets Argyle crashes the limo into the van.
And then he punches him out. I'm assuming
Is Theo
He's
arrested?
unconscious.
someone just goes, "Oh yeah, one of them's in there."
Gotcha.
I would
Off
imagine
screen.
what we know about Argyle. He probably threw his ass in the trunk and then drove up with him. You know, like I'm guessing
Yeah.
that guy's in Argyle's trunk.
Right at the end, I did know, and I mean it is an 80s action movie, even though it's a particularly smart version of one. Like McClane doesn't just to get to leave.
Oh
Right?
yeah, no,
No, he doesn't just get to be like, "Oh, this is my friend," or
no.
"We're gonna take off. You guys got."
All right,
Like-
thanks. I definitely
Like
wasn't a
follow-up
part of this.
interviews.
Don't worry, we all know
Yeah.
that. Okay.
The deputy guy's like, "We need to debrief," and it's kind of like, "Yeah, no, you
do-
probably
you do need to debrief. Yeah, you should. And I mean, maybe
let
for
him go to
your
a hospital first, but
and also for your protection, because we don't know if there's other terrorist members that are waiting for people to leave. You know, like
Right,
there's
yeah.
definitely a lot.
yeah, you definitely
going
can't just
on
take
here.
off. The two special agents, both named Johnson, are credited as Big Johnson and Little Johnson. I noticed in the credits.
I did not notice that.
Yeah,
I'd say they were both pretty big Johnsons.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming the older one is Big Johnson, I guess. But yeah, they're credited as Big Johnson, Little Johnson, and it's like, oh, they had a lot of fun with those two guys being named Johnson. It was the one time the guy's like, yes, it's Special Agent Johnson. No, the other one.
Well, I think that's the thing with the movie that bleeds through is they just had a lot of fun in general with it.
Seems like it.
Just all around.
Mm-hmm.
It super seems like it.
It's more serious than most 80s action movies, but it doesn't take itself more seriously than most 80s action movies.
No, it's yeah, and it has fun, but it's never dumb.
No.
You always know know like why someone's making the decision they're making.
I don't think there was a single slapstick moment. You know,
No.
like it was all just like funny, good.
Yeah. And a lot of the fights and the kills are like legitimately brutal that
Mhm.
happen. And I mentioned in the Discord before we started, but yet another movie with just some dangling chains.
Yeah. Yep.
I was really surprised when that guy came back from the chains. I know I feel like I fall for that every single time. And dude comes back from like something that everyone thought was a
Right.
beyond dead position.
Yeah.
But when he popped up at the end, I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
Son of a bitch.
that guy's a monster.
Yeah.
It was great. As soon as he popped up too, I was like, "Oh, there you go. Carl gets his own arc." I knew that's exactly what was coming. It was so good. It was so worth it. Too.
Yeah. It's just awesome. And then we obviously have to touch on the very end of the fighting and the action parts of it, where John, he hears his wife from down the hallway, sees he only has 2 bullets left, and you find out later it like zooms in on some festive tape, and you see later that he's faking everyone out. He has a machine gun, and they tell him to like put it down. And he
Mhm.
does, but he's got a pistol taped to his back.
Oh,
That was
the
a good
best. That was
scene.
great.
Yeah.
There's some great like villain monologue type stuff, and he's making fun of him and being a cowboy again.
That's when we've talked about watching this. I've mentioned I've watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine a couple times, and it's the main character's favorite movie. So there was a couple scenes like that where like I was expecting them to come because he parodies them in the show so much. So
That
it's
makes
just
sense,
cool to like see like it's like, oh, is this? It's the end of the movie. He's got one gun in his hand. I know there's a fucking other one taped somewhere, and like it was just cool to see the payoff of like.
For sure. Yeah, he does. I love the kind of just like weird vibe where everyone just starts laughing. Like he gets everyone laughing. And then he's like, I'm going to distract them with weird laughter. And
Yes.
then everyone's laughing like too hard for a while. And it goes on for like kind of a while. And then he shoots the sports. Well, he shoots Hans first and then the college sports guy.
Yep.
And then you get the iconic scene of Hans hanging off of Holly's arm out of the window. And John trying to like get to her bracelet or watch.
The Rolex.
Watch the Rolex that
Rolex?
Ellis
The-
gave her.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, the Rolex that Alice gave her. Right,
that's
right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
didn't
couldn't
put
remember
that
his bracelet or
together. That's
watch.
Good.
And Hans, in slow motion, you see him slowly like steadying his aim to shoot them. And right before he's about to, they get the clasp open, and he falls to his death. A very iconic shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was cool. I feel like I've probably seen that shot parodied before because
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems so familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like in a montage of like movies that are good.
Yeah,
I feel
yes.
like it's in like any shot like that. And then you get the ending stuff. We already basically covered everything else. But so that shot is, they told him that they were going to go on the count of 3 and they dropped him on 1. That's why Alan Rickman looks so surprised.
Oh.
So good.
They made him do it twice. They only used the first take, but they were like, just in case, do it again. I doubt he trusted whatever count they told him it was going to be that time. It varies depending on what you read. It was either 20 feet or 70 feet that they dropped him.
What?
Wow.
And it's a pretty difficult stunt because they drop him onto a big airbag,
Yeah.
but most stuntmen don't fall backwards because then you can't see where you're going.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
70 feet?
Yeah, apparently depending on who you ask, it's either 20 or
that
70 feet.
Urban legend.
That doesn't seem really necessary.
No? Well, so they drop Alan Rickman that far, but then the stuntman who's actually doing, when you see the body falling,
Oh.
he fell 318 feet.
Wow.
because the actual building's in that shot, so they couldn't do it at a different place. So they actually did throw him off the building.
Wow.
But he was in a special harness that as he got closer to the ground, it slowed down. So you don't see the body hit the ground,
Right.
obviously.
That's insane.
It's falling, and then it cuts to the deputy and Al, and you hear a thump, and they both kind of wince. That's when he says, "I hope that wasn't a hostage." Yeah.
Yeah, if you fall right, you can do crazy distances.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even when you don't fall right, there's those like people up in Russia doing like the lineman jobs that just fall 600 feet and get up and walk away. Your bodies are just weird.
Yeah. A lot of it was pretty practical. A lot of the stunts and stuff. This is 1988. They don't really have the CGI capable of
Oh yeah,
doing a ton yet. So
blew up the building because they had to blow up the building.
Uh-huh.
If not, it's gonna look like crap.
Yeah, I mean, more or less, yeah. So for the final helicopter scene, it took, and this is just from IMDb or Wikipedia, so always a grain of salt, whatever. But it's still interesting. Sorry if you hate that I wasn't there. I don't know myself. I have to use research. Sorry.
You dick. Ben.
I know. So the final
These were
helicopter scene.
organic
I
facts
thought
you
we
came
thought
up
you were
with.
there.
Yeah, I was there taking notes, but it's been a while. It's been like 32, 33 years. So.
Putting that on the Insta.
So that helicopter scene on the roof, it took them 6 months of preparation. They only had 2 hours to film it. They did 3 attempts above Fox Plaza and the actual building. They had 9 camera crews filming with 24 different cameras. The cinematographer said that the different angles enhanced the realism. It does look awesome when the helicopter comes up to the top of the building and you see from their angle Willis like firing the gun with the hostages there. It does look really cool.
Yes.
So, yeah.
He almost
Good
saves
shit.
him too. It was a good plan to get the helicopter away from the building, but
Yep. Like I said, they used an actual SWAT vehicle and actually blew it up on Fox Plaza.
awesome.
Yeah, they had to invent like a different kind of camera to capture Alan Rickman falling because people fall fast and it's hard to keep them in focus. So I assume that's part of why they do it in slow motion. Plus, you want to be able to see his facial expression. But I guess they only have about a second and a half in there, actually. But, no.
So I'm surprised, Ben, that you're not bringing up the biggest discussion point of this movie, though.
Oh, yeah.
Great debate.
Is it a Christmas movie?
It's absolutely a Christmas movie.
I have it written like 3 times in here that it's absolutely a Christmas movie. I can't even believe it's a debate.
I know. I don't know. I feel like
Chrissy
I could
didn't
go,
think it was.
Well, I could go either way. It's obviously set in a Christmas environment in that, but it does end with like a very Christmassy scene. Isn't it snowing at the end when they're
It
like
ended with
reunited?
Let It Snow.
It's
is
a
the
happy
outro
ending.
Let
song.
snow.
It
I have a
is,
machine gun now. Ho, ho, ho.
but like Christmas obviously isn't the central focus of it. I don't know. I mean, I could definitely be convinced either way. I'm
Yeah.
not strong against
People
it
say
being-
Merry Christmas a lot.
Yeah.
So if you want to like needlessly gender things, I'd say this is the only Christmas movie I'd say was geared towards men. You know, like every other Christmas movie would be more of like a female based like kind of plot. This would be your like male perspective Christmas movie. Like I saved my wife. We didn't have this whole sappy like romantic get together. I kicked a bunch of ass and now my wife loves me again. I don't know.
Yeah. He did.
I don't know. It's a robbery taking place during Christmas Eve. I don't know. I mean,
but the whole plot, like the beginning plot, is like I'm at odds with my wife. We need to get back together. Right. There's the guy trying to steal her. It's Ellis. He's a douchebag. You know, it's a Hallmark Christmas movie plot with a bunch of gunshots in action in the middle with a Hallmark classic. Yeah. Resolution. I don't know.
It is someone like coming home for Christmas and like fighting off the new potential beau and stuff. Kind of
gets to go home to the kids
kind
afterwards.
No,
I bet you the guest bed's being unmade. You know, she's Mrs. McClane now. I don't know. It's basically a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
There's no presents.
There is.
There's a big fucking bear.
Oh, that's true.
The bear.
Yeah. I mean, there's no scenes of John McClane and his kids together, but there's
From
a photo.
the guy's perspective.
Exactly. So yeah, a couple questions. So what do you think Argyle was just doing? Because it takes him a really long time to realize that there's currently terrorists.
Well, how long do you think? How long was he in the parking garage? What's the start to finish time? Do you think of all that stuff?
I think it's happening. There's some of it that can't be happening exactly real time, but I think it's basically over the course of a few hours.
I was going to say anywhere between 3 and 6 was.
I had 4. 4 is the number I had.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think 4 is the safe. Like I'd go with 4.
There's a lot of waiting around.
Yeah, he was
in between the scenes in the movie. I would assume.
I was just gonna say he was not concerned at all.
No, he didn't care.
It was hours.
Until he heard on the news that the building he was currently in is being occupied by terrorists.
Like drinking. He was like listening to music. He was calling a girl. I don't know.
He was chilling with the bear.
I'm pretty sure just because of the way Bruce Willis worded things, he was on the clock.
On call, right?
Just using company property. He had a car phone. I mean, back in the 80s, like nobody could call from not their house. So he probably just was like dialing everyone he knew. Like, guess where I'm calling from? Yeah. A fucking car.
It was his first day on the job too. So maybe he thought this is just like what you do. You just sit around and wait for 4 hours and
you probably
don't hear from your client.
I mean, this guy happened to be Bruce Willis, but most of his clients, that's probably what you do. You know, they go into a business meeting. You're not going to bother some guy in like a boardroom, you know?
Yeah. And obviously he's in the beginning for the useful kind of characterization of both he and Bruce Willis don't know from limo folk. So he just sits in the front with Argyle.
I did have a note about that because he's like, it's my first day. I don't know. I'm like, all right, I'm sorry, but you should probably know how to drive the limo.
Yeah, like I'm sure they told you like.
I thought that was kind of like shoving the blue collar thing in your face a little bit.
For sure.
It was
it's
funny.
A quick characterization.
Fine, but I was just efficient. Like, you should know how to do your job, just at least the intro level.
Yeah, but it's efficient characterization for both of them. Argyle's kind of like, whatever, and Bruce Willis is like, I don't know about limos. California.
I did love that too, where he's like, I'm a taxi driver. They expect me to talk a lot because, I mean, anyone that wasn't Bruce Willis in that limo would be like, Argyle, you need to shut the fuck up right now.
Argyle was wicked cool, dude.
No,
really?
I loved him. I loved him too.
But you mean
like,
the kind of folk that Bruce Willis's character thinks takes limos when you want him to talk.
Exactly. Like, think of like any of the other board members.
When
like
he put on that like rap Christmas song, yeah, probably a lot of white businessmen in the 80s would have been offended.
Very upset.
They hated Run
very
DMC.
Upset.
Yeah. That's Run DMC.
Ellis would have acted like it was his favorite song though and started rapping along.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Argyle was really introspective on Bruce Willis, obviously.
Yeah.
He could definitely read people. I feel like he had a lot of good character qualities to be a limo driver. But you're right. Maybe he just, but that's because he's so introspective. Maybe he can read the room so well. And if he had one of those clients, maybe he puts on a different like facade.
I can see that.
Bruce Willis was sitting in the front seat with him. So he's like, all right, we're friends. You know, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, people like that have a good read of who they can fuck with and who they can't.
Right.
Yeah, and if you're talking about like a taxi driver in the city, even though one's LA, and then a cop from a city, even though the other one's New York, they're probably, you know, they know how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right. They know how to talk.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any complaints about Argyle. It was just an interesting, like, I don't know. I had some thoughts.
So Legacy, the movie, we already talked a little bit about it, challenging and changing the way action movies look and the way action movies cast, especially the stars. And then obviously you have so many other kind of copycat type movies that are, you know, Die Hard on a Bus, for instance, like Speed, or just
I
other
have seen
things.
Speed.
when-
I like Speed.
It's people in tight quarters against overwhelming odds. That's what this says. But you know,
I was gonna say I don't know if I give Speed shit because I'd give them.
I want to give Speed shit. Speed's good.
I'd give them uniqueness for their plot with like that
Yeah.
bus and stuff like that. That was pretty.
It's not. It's not like a derogatory thing. It's just to say that it's such a big influence on a lot of other action movies. Obviously, even Brooklyn Nine-Nine characters very influenced.
They do a whole like Die Hard parody where he's like
So
in the
good.
store. I have a note because he did like he's writing on his arm like making up names for him, and like I didn't realize Bruce Willis actually does that like in the because it looks ridiculous when the joke character in Brooklyn Nine-Nine does it, but obviously not when Bruce Willis is like being strategic about
And
it.
I think the joke is that Joe Latrulio's character Charles has only seen the edited version, so he thinks it's what yippee kayak.
he says yippee kayak other buckets, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm pretty sure that's right.
Like the snakes on a plane quote. That I can't remember what it is.
Monkey something.
Yeah, something
I was
about
gonna say, I know it's
monkeys.
monkey something, right?
I'm sick of these monkey loving.
It's probably monkey loving.
It might be monkey loving. That sounds worse.
It's
Just
worse.
say motherfucker.
So Bruce Willis, who are the other two action heroes that you Stallone and
Stallone and Schwarzenegger.
yeah, so like these giant ripped like 275-pound
Yeah.
bodybuilder type dudes.
People who you can't conceive of just a normal guy who exists at a normal
That
blue collar
size.
job.
Yeah.
and they also have these incredibly deep voices and
Yeah. And Willis is kind of like sarcastic. He's self-deprecating, and he's even though he's in really good shape, he's still kind of just like, yeah, that guy could be a cop.
Well, I mean, at that point, he's still pretty much blue collar, right? I mean, he
Right,
was
yeah.
like a TV show actor. I wouldn't
Right.
really put them as like the top of the.
Yeah, those
You
are
know?
the
I thought he looked good.
Still an actor.
No,
He
no.
looks great too.
I don't.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, like to give that white collar impression, like he wasn't a big celebrity. He
Yeah.
was basically a blue collar person. I feel
the
like,
character's very relatable. I mean, I feel like everyone's met a guy like John McClane in their life,
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, just a
but no one has
resourceful,
met like Rambo in real life. That doesn't even
True.
make sense.
Right, exactly. So to the point that they didn't even put him on the original poster for the movie. It's just the Nakatomi Plaza, Fox Plaza in LA. Eventually, he's on obviously the marketing for the movie. Once they're like, oh, actually, this guy gives iconic star performance in the movie, and he's about to be extremely famous.
So
Wow.
did they
He was already famous, but like movie star famous.
did they rename the tower or was it never Nakatomi
No,
Tower?
it's never. It's Fox Plaza in LA.
Okay, it was
Yeah.
always just like
Mhm.
they gave a fake.
They liked how it looked with its kind of angles and such, and it is an iconic looking building.
Gotcha.
They're not wrong. They don't think it's going to do that well, but it does. It makes $140 million. Like I said, the 10th highest grossing
Wow.
film of that year.
What was
What
the
time are you-
budget?
what
Like
ti-
10?
Budget is 25 to 35,
Wow.
and it's almost entirely on location in LA.
What time of year was it released? Do we know if it was summer around Christmas? I'm just curious.
She's still on the Christmas argument.
July. It's Christmas in
Interesting.
July.
Yep, that's classic Christmas time.
Classic.
Christmas in July.
You know how they do.
Obviously, Willis's performance and Alan Rickman's performance are all, even the negative reviews are saying, yeah, though that is really good, especially the Hans Gruber performance.
What are the
from
negative
Rickman.
reviews? Have you like looked at enough of them to
Yeah.
know what the general criticism of the movie is?
I haven't looked at them, but I've looked at a summary of them, and the criticism was focused on violence, plot, and Willis's performance. Which
Oh, really?
They're criticizing Willis's
Yeah.
performance.
Interesting.
Oh,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
But even they liked McTiernan's direction and Rickman's performance.
If
the
I
violence.
if I had to give
So violent.
criticism of Willis's performance, I'd probably say, and I think this is more just because of his character, but like he didn't really show a ton of emotions through it. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
kind of like he had his moments where you attribute emotion to it, but I don't know if he really like he kind of had that Harrison Ford apathy thing. But I think that was part of the character.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. He does open up when he thinks he's about to die, like telling you how like
I don't.
I didn't. It took me a while to realize I was a jerk and tell my wife I'm sorry. Yeah, I know it's not actually your criticism. I see where you're coming from.
Like if I just had to like maybe that's what they were saying, but I think it was perfectly done.
Yeah, so it did get 4 Academy Award nominations. Now Bruce Willis is a leading man. Now Alan Rickman is famous.
What were the
Just what's up.
nominations for?
So it gets nominated for Best Visual Effects, Sound Mixing, Film Editing, and Sound Editing.
I'm assuming it won none.
I think that's the correct assumption.
That's sad.
It is sad, but the editing
You
in this
blow up
movie
an
is
entire
awesome.
floor of a building. You don't even win an Academy Award.
You know,
Bullshit.
Forever.
The,
Should have blown up the Academy Awards.
should've.
Whoa.
Absolutely should have.
Edit that part out.
Die Hard now considered one of the greatest action films and often named as one of the best Christmas films.
Well, I was going to ask you, it keeps coming up on podcasts where you're like, I don't know if we'll ever do another perfect movie. Is this a perfect movie?
It's a lot different than Spirited Away and Silence of the Lambs.
Well, but like, so if we were going to separate out the categories, right? Spirited Away is this perfect children's movie. Silence of the Lambs is a perfect, like, crime thriller movie. We need an action movie to be the perfect one. Which one is it?
Well, yeah, like I said, this is my archetypical. This is a perfectly built and constructed action movie. I like those other two movies more than Die Hard.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd call it a perfect movie in the sense of there's nothing I'd change about it.
If you're grading it on a scale of what it's trying to accomplish, I don't think it can accomplish any of it better.
No. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a very good. That's a very
There's really
distinct.
no dull points in the movie.
No.
It's all interesting.
Yeah.
That's what I always forget. I turned it on. It's like 2 hours and 12 minutes. I don't remember it being that long.
There's literally a comment in the Discord. I was talking to Greg about doing something afterwards, and I'm like, never mind. I gotta wait. Apparently, Die Hard's 2 fucking hours long. Worth it.
And more.
And I wasn't sure how it was going to be that long either. And I had no idea like what this movie was about when we started watching it. And then like I kind of started to figure it out. And I think there were commercials or we paused it or something. I'm like, how is there still an hour and a half left? But it didn't feel like it. It really.
Yeah, and so I'm seeing that, and then I started watching it on I think IMDb's free channel or whatever, and it has commercials, and then it was just
We
like
did
there's
commercials too.
Yeah.
Brutal.
the commercials every 9 minutes. I was just like, this is absolutely killing the flow, and this movie is all flow. And so then I was just like, I gotta,
Guess who got 4 more of my goddamn dollars?
yeah, I had to fund the Bezos rocket project with 4 more of my dollars.
We
as
did
well.
Amazon with commercials when we watched it, and
Yeah.
the commercials. I mean, it sucks. The
Yeah, it
commercials,
sucks.
commercials ruin movies.
I was watching it. It was like, okay, if it's a commercial every 20 minutes, but it was like every 8.5 minutes, I think. It was crazy.
Ours were probably every 20.
But
Yeah,
They
they
were
weren't
like
too bad.
solid,
That's not too bad.
solid 3-minute commercials.
There was 7 commercials, or 7 or 8. I counted them, but when I got to the first one and I noticed that it was over 120 seconds, I was like, no,
Yeah, over 2 minutes.
nope,
long.
nope, not doing that.
Yeah, it was crazy. So after the first commercial break, it comes back to the movie and it's still the opening credits, and it's like, okay, you've gone too far.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is too-
yeah.
You've gone too far.
I don't know what Amazon's playing at either. I think we need a petition or something. They're gonna give us free movies with ads with the Prime that I pay for monthly. Like, are you?
So that was from the IMDb channel on Amazon. Is how I watched it. So I don't know if that's how you
No,
guys
we
We
watch
I
it.
did
mean,
the
that's-
Prime app on our Roku.
So I did mark after seeing 2 hours and 12 minutes. I don't remember it being that long. It's 17 minutes until the quote unquote terrorists make it to the parking garage. And I noted that up until that point, the first 17 minutes are just like kind of typical family comedy
Hallmark
kind of setup. And then by 24 minutes in, they've already busted into the party, and McLean's already run shoeless into the stairwell and is in survival and hopefully eventual rescue mode.
Brutal. Walking up those stairs in bare feet must have been
I know.
gross.
So
So
like
so that's by 24 minutes in. So you still have almost 2 hours.
almost 2 hours of cat and mouse.
Yeah,
It's good.
it's great, and it does go by. It's not a problem getting through those 2 hours. I don't think.
As far as sequels go, so there's how many Die Hards? Do you know?
Yeah, I do. I have
At
it.
least 3 more?
Is
I know-
Die
Wasn't
Hard
there a recent
2,
one?
Die Hard with a Vengeance, Live Free or Die Hard, and A Good Day to Die Hard, 2013, most recent one.
That's the one with Justin Long, right?
Justin Long.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure Justin
either
Long
that or
is in
the
it.
07 one.
I've seen parts of that, and they do a different version of the
You
gun.
saw parts of that before you watched this movie.
Yep, it was on a cruise, I think. You know,
Yeah,
they have
he's
those
the
stupid,
2007 one, Live Free
That's
or
funny.
Die Hard.
Yeah, I saw the end of that actually. I think there's a girl in it as well as daughter, maybe.
They're all like original plots, though, right? None of them are like remakes of this.
No, it's all just the continuing adventures of older and older.
Are
John
they all
McClane.
Christmas themed or take place around Christmas?
I don't know actually off the top of my head. That's
you
an
seen
interesting
them?
question. I haven't seen all of them. No, I don't remember which ones I've seen. I know there's one that like out of context he's about to die and the villain's like, oh, any last words, and he says yippee ki yay, motherfucker. And you're like, well, no, I mean, in the first one, it was a joke that worked in the context of the conversation he was having. That's not just his catchphrase.
It is now.
I'm
I
John
think it is
Wayne,
now.
Pilgrims.
It is now.
They're all not well received, right?
So yeah, that's the Justin Long one's Mary Elizabeth Winstead plays his daughter.
None of the movies are well received, Ben, the sequels.
Not so much. Like they're pretty successful.
I don't know what you're gonna do after. You know what I like? I can imagine all of the other movies are just like good action movies.
Well, they become 90s action sequels, so it's the same thing again a lot of times.
Yeah.
Oh man, he went in another building. Why'd he do that? And then it blows it out, and then I think eventually it's not even like him in a building, and you're like, yo, he operates in buildings though, just one building.
I will say the only action movie series that gets away with that is John Wick has been making each sequel better and better somehow. I don't know.
I do
don't
love
know how
John
they do
Wick.
that.
We talked about John Wick a little bit in the last episode.
Did you
It
really?
was part of the quiz that we did at the end.
That one's not out yet, so I have no way of knowing that. I wasn't on it.
That's correct. But yep,
It's fantastic.
it's good shit.
So the only other things I have written down was so the chief of police. I thought this was a funny line. It was kind of just like, oh man, this guy's so dumb. When he first came in, the body that hit the ground that Al saw, he was like, "It was probably just a businessman jumping off the building, had a rough day in the market, just committing suicide. You know these
love
businessmen and their depression."
Man, LA
That guy
is
is
a
the
hellscape,
worst.
huh?
I was like, one of the worst takes of all time.
Takes a lot to concern the police.
Like, oh well, I mean, if it was just somebody killing himself. I don't see how that's our problem.
Guy was the absolute worst.
Yeah, he was awful. Just no, I think that's all I have. Other than, I mean, it's definitely a Christmas movie. I think it's a Christmas movie that is more targeted to male adults for sure.
I hope so. This is our second Christmas movie of the season, so hopefully it's a Christmas movie.
Definitely counts.
I think if there's a single Merry Christmas involved, you can chalk it up as a Christmas movie.
Okay.
There's like a couple of like just Christmas songs. There's just a lot of points where I'm just like, you've specifically went out of your way to like
It's a
bring
heavy theme
Christmas
of
back
Christmas.
into it.
Mm-hmm.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah,
Ben.
sure, go for it.
Your Mount Rushmore of bald actors. Does Bruce Willis make the top 4?
It's tough. Did they have? Is it only for roles they were bald during? Because then you can't count Die
Oh,
Hard.
yeah.
Okay. Then probably yes. I like Bruce Willis a lot.
I got Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, Patrick Stewart, and I don't know who I put in my 4th slot.
Do they have to be naturally bald, or like they were bald for a role? And
I feel like naturally
I mean, you
bald.
can put Vin Diesel up there if that's what you're asking. That would make me sad.
there's a recent creepy video that I don't even know how to search to show anyone ever, and maybe it was just a fever dream I personally had that some people were sharing around Twitter. That is just like a bunch of dudes dressed like Vin Diesel, just saying "family" in unison over and over again, and it's like a 45-second long video.
Wow.
Yes.
I think I've seen it recently too.
Just guys in like sunglasses and like a black A-frame and like a huge cross necklace, and they're just going family, family, family.
The line between meme and fever dream gets thinner and thinner every day.
So real quick, I'm just going to search like best bald actors and just see if there's anyone else that I want to pop up there. I mean, Sam Jackson, I guess you got to include.
The other guy I know off the top of my head is the guy from Westworld. I can't remember. He's both a young actor and an old actor in the first season, but the old actor.
Ed Harris?
Yeah, Ed Harris.
Ed Harris. Is,
Woody Harrelson.
Ed Harris, yeah. The number one on the thebaldagent.com, top 20 bald actors of all time, lists Sean Connery at number 1.
Oh,
I
I
definitely,
don't know if I'd call him a bald
I don't
actor.
consider him bald, but I guess
How
he
many
is.
movies have he even done as a bald actor?
Yeah, he
at
wasn't
this
well
point?
known.
Right.
He's a
I'm
bald
thinking
actor.
more like,
His
and I guess,
heyday.
you know, by the
Yeah.
end, I'm thinking more like Jason Statham, who is like
A bald person.
a bald person, you
I
know?
feel like Sean Connery was like known for his hair when he was, you know,
Right.
acting. Like,
Right, yeah. And I think at this point, John Travolta's admitted that he's bald also.
You can't count
Oh,
him. He hasn't
why
has
can't-
he
No,
been
no, I would-
bald in any movie.
Oh.
I
don't
wouldn't
even know if anyone's seen him
necessarily
bald.
Is he bald in the Punisher movie? I don't remember. He's the villain in the Punisher.
oh, he's balding. I think he has like that very short stubble,
Yeah.
like right before you go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Terry Crews.
I
is
was
another one
just
can
thinking
think
Terry
of. I like
Crews. Tucci, Stanley Tucci.
I don't even know who that is off the top of my head.
You would. None of us have said The Rock.
Isn't that a Bruins player?
The Rock. Ugh.
I mean, literally the most, the highest grossing actor of all time.
I cannot even. I don't know how I didn't smell that coming. I don't know. I hate it.
Yeah, you don't
Did
like
you
what
say
he's cooking.
smell on
No.
purpose, Robbie?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
you
bad.
don't
I hate
appreciate
you.
what he's cooking.
I don't. It's bad. It's not bad. It's just like so generic.
He's really sanded down at this point, so it's he won't even be in Fast and Furious movies anymore, which is annoying because I love the dumb weird competition that him and Vin Diesel have.
They're so weird. You were telling me about that, right? Like they can't be on set together. Like...
They can't. No one. They have supposedly. The rumor is all the main actors in the Fast and Furious system devised a point system for how good they look in fights. Like if you knock someone out, it's 5 points or something like that. And no one can end up with more points than anyone else at the end of the movie.
It's so
And like if you like
stupid.
headbutt someone, it's like 3 points, or like you get like a really good punch off, it's 2. It's just shit like that.
I guess like once you have like all of the money, you have to pick petty things to
Yeah.
care about. Like,
Tyrese, a bald actor.
Oh, okay.
Shit.
Dr. Phil.
Michael Jordan.
Oh, the woman from Doctor Strange.
The woman from Doctor Strange. An inclusive pick.
Oh, yeah, that's Tilda Swinton's character.
Yep. There you go. Tilda Swinton.
Very uncontroversial to have a white lady play that Asian character. Not Asian
Yeah,
in the movie,
what was-
to be clear. It's
Oh,
not
well,
a Scarlett
I
Johansson
was gonna say,
situation.
Scarlett was already playing in the movie, so you already had that.
No, it's just if you do the image search for best bald actors, it is just a picture of John Travolta and his terrible toupee. Very sad.
Bryan Cranston.
Really
just for
does.
Breaking Bad.
There you go. Yeah. I'll put him above The Rock.
Yeah. Just to throw out one more, Danny DeVito.
My number one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
He should be on there.
Even when he was not bald, he was still like his hairlines on the back of his head.
I don't think his
So-
hair ever grew all the way to the top.
No, I really didn't. He's got one of them heads.
They really need to make a live action Hercules with him before he's too old to do it. I need to see that.
You can just de-age him. Just use. I mean, he's like a goat man anyway, so you're going to CGI his face.
He's a goat man. Like,
All right, so I guess that's all our thoughts on Die Hard. Yeah, Willis is definitely on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I didn't even realize the list was this small.
there's really not many people you can put on
It's
it.
tough. Yeah, I think
Basically,
yeah.
like Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Everyone else, I feel
They're-
like is just like a
they're
give me
probably
because-
locks.
Patrick Stewart's pretty legit.
Oh yeah. No, sorry. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I like Stewart a lot. Yeah, he comes up a lot on these lists. It looks like.
Stewart's fantastic. He's just like not in things now, so I forget about him.
I got to go back and see which Connery roles he's bald in because he might be there
Is he
too.
in League? He might be
Yeah,
in
he
League.
is.
He might be
Wait,
in League.
you're talking about the League of
Are you
Extraordinary
shortening
Gentlemen?
League of
Yeah.
Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't like that.
You
movie.
just call it League and expect people to know like 2004's 52nd highest grossing film or something?
I think we established with the Kangaroo Jag trivia, I only watch poor movies, and the fact that I'm a wealth to this podcast. So.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a league night just to check out League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
League night.
You guys don't watch that every weekend?
Yeah, League Tuesdays.
I'm not trying to make you feel bad. It's just I've never heard anyone call it. Oh, it's off by 1 year. I overbid. It's 2003.
That wasn't the worst movie ever.
I saw a
Everyone
movie in
hates on-
theaters. I
everyone
remember
hates
seeing it in
on so
theaters.
much. It wasn't that bad.
It was terrible.
It actually made a decent amount of money, so my bad.
Fine.
My bad. Everyone's constantly talking about League, so I don't know why I underrated it so much.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't play League of Legends.
Oh no, I mean this movie. Everyone's constantly like, "Oh, did you check out League? I just caught some new the fucking deleted scenes. Have you checked out them?" Sean
Is there
Connery's
another movie
there.
called League?
No, I'm making fun of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh well, that's just extraordinary.
Anyway, trying to end the podcast.
I'm gonna tell him you said that.
Man, I'm sad that we don't get a game.
Just like I reached out
I
to
didn't come up with
Hopkins.
one. What game do you want to play?
I was promised a game.
I don't, but not by me.
I don't remember.
By Greg. Greg promised me a game.
I think there are usually games on Greg's episodes, but
Mm.
I don't know.
It's been about 50-50 for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think the podcast is generally about 50-50. I don't know. I'm trying to keep them.
You just show me a game
you know.
next time. You owe me a game next time.
We'll do like one really long one that everyone's upset
Perfect.
halfway through that
Hell
it's still
yeah.
going on about. That's how they mostly go.
Is there like a really controversial movie? What's a controversial movie we can do and get everyone
Kangaroo
upset?
Jack.
I don't know if that's controversial. It just has like an 8 on Rotten Tomatoes out of 100.
It's gonna be controversial
So
because
controversial.
Corey fucking loves it.
I'm pretty sure it's not controversial if everyone agrees.
Corey loves
The
it.
majority.
That's also a movie I saw in theaters as a kid.
I just don't know if that exactly fits the, I can't believe you haven't seen.
I can't believe it. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
I don't know if I just want to end the podcast.
Hit the button.
No, I got stuff. You know how it goes. Thank you guys so much for being on Late to the Movies. You can follow us on Late to number 2 the movies. That's on Instagram. Late to the movies _podcast. You can check out the TeePublic store. Just search Late to the Movies and I don't know, buy like 70, 80 t-shirts. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being on. Pat, Chrissy, Robbie. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye then.
Bye.